A lot of the coaches on staff say, how's this going to look? I mean,
Right.
what's the field going to look like? What's the ground going to look like? What's the temperature going to be? And I guess if that's the case and they postpone it, then I guess we'll roll in February.
It'd be really nice to have turf over at Vigilante right about now,
It
wouldn't it?
would be, wouldn't it?
Got my shout guest here, Jason Walkership. It's just there's like I keep saying, there's so many unknowns, and people give me a hard time on social media because I'm advocating to take a year off. We don't know enough about this disease. We don't know the long-term health effects. And I get that there's seniors that would be very frustrated and upset. But at the end of the day, you're supposed to be a student first. And this goes from high school to college. The student, Trevor Lawrence said that, these kids are going to get sent home. Well, they're not. They're still going to be on campus. You still get that camaraderie. And I know that sports is all about, teamwork and competitiveness and everything. I'd hate to see a whole season lost. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I want safety first. And that's,
Sure.
I don't want, a Noah Kovic, who you'd love to have on your football team, to not have a wrestling season or have a wrestling season and someone gets sick.
Sure.
That type of deal. And or Bridger Grovem. I mean, it's the same type of thing. Would you like to have Noah, by the way, play football?
I had Noah in class, and we went after him a couple of years ago to play football, and he was considering it. And I know his grandfather, Hal Crow, was pushing him pretty hard to do it, but wrestling in that family is first and foremost.
Yeah, well, he's a state champ. He just won a big tournament. We had him on the air yesterday. But,
Oh, did he?
Where would you put him?
Probably a linebacker type. Zane McCormick was a big-time wrestler. And,
Yeah.
we have Kovic's cousin coming up, Tyler, who's going to be a sophomore. And I don't know how much wrestling he did, but usually on the football field, you can tell who has wrestled just by the way they tackle. And Zane was such a great, leading tackler last year for us, and he was a strong wrestler. They understand body position, they understand leverage, angles, a lot of different things. So he'd probably end up being a linebacker for us.
You'd love that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You have a good linebacking core now, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, let's not throw anybody under the bus. Bottom line, give me your honest assessment. Will there be a football season? High school.
Depends on what day you're asking me.
Okay. What is it? August 11th.
I certainly want a football season to happen. But as the short history has shown us, if I were a betting man, I don't know if there's going to be a season. It's just
The unknown.
the unknown. It's the unknown, and it's a constant unknown since last March. When we came out of the order of, we're coming out of this, and then all of a sudden we're back to masking. I thought to myself, wow, I guess this is real, first and foremost. But, for the kids, I certainly would like to have a season. Whether it's the 7 games and a playoff, if we could get through that would be great. So yeah, that's the best I can give you.
That's all. That works, and you're honest with me. You always have been, and I appreciate that. I hope you have a season. I really do. And I was super negative of Legion trying it, but they got through it, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah.
And that's great. Helena taking second. My Bozeman Bucks taking repeat because I'm a Buck. So
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a good year for Bozeman. Bucks, Hawks. So.
Yeah,
When are the Bruins gonna?
We'll see what happens to Bozeman with the new split.
Is it gonna be Kalispell? Is it gonna be Flathead Glacier? I hope not. I mean, I don't want Gallatin to be Glacier and my Bozeman to.
Yeah, well, I think this year Bozeman Hawks are going to be pretty solid. I mean, they have a pretty solid squad coming back. I know that Coach Weshy does a good job, but I've even talked to him this summer when I was moving my daughter back to Bozeman and getting ready for school. And I said, well, what do you think? He said, this year we're going to be fine. He goes, and then I think there'll be a few thin years. We're going to take a hit, and then, the Raptors are going to have to rally and develop that senior leadership. But he goes, the split's going to be pretty solid. And as long as everybody abides by you're going here, you're going here. He goes, I think we'll be able to rebound. And so, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It will be interesting.
It'll be interesting to see what East Helena does when they go varsity next year too, and how that's going to impact Helena High. which could impact capital in the long run too,
It could.
number-wise.
Yeah, people
So,
moving out there and
a lot of unknowns.
a lot of unknowns.
It's not just a virus, Coach.
That's
It's just
right.
everything.
Everything.
All right. I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your time. You can feel free to stick around if you want, unless you got stuff to do. But
Okay, I'll stick around for a few minutes.
yeah, I'm gonna talk to Paul Schwedelson of the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. We're gonna break down Jeff Choate's thoughts and his press conference yesterday. Kyle Mihelish, nobody is better. Of course, I'm going to say the exact same thing tomorrow to Scott Evans when he sits in that
That's
chair.
right.
There's nobody better than Scott Evans. But we got two great high school coaches, football coaches in the in Helena proper, with Capital and Helena High. Scott Evans will join us tomorrow, but we'll talk to Paul Schwedelson, Big Sky Conference, and Jeff Choate when we come back here. Jason Walker Show. Stay with us.
Store-wide savings are what you'll find when you shop for new home furnishings at Rucker's Furniture. This means tremendous values on Helena's largest in-stock selection of home furnishings. When you shop Rucker's, you'll find store-wide savings on the furniture you want for every room in your home. And you'll also find our selection of Serta iComfort, the most comfortable beds in Helena. 12-month financing is available with approved credit on most purchases over $299. Ask for details. You'll find store-wide savings at Rucker's Furniture, 1010 Dearborn, Helena.
Dinner's Done Right is open and ready for you to stop in and stock up for the summer. How does a Big Sky flank steak sound? Or a sage roasted pork loin? June's menu also includes a Parmesan tilapia and a variety of fantastic chicken cuisines and more. And if that's not enough, Dinner's Done Right's grab and go soup, salad, and nacho bar is back as well, with one exception. The delightful staff now will make it for you. And don't forget deliveries to Bozeman and Great Falls on select days. Stop in at 1212 Cedar Street in Helena or visit dinnersdoneright.com. Have you thought about buying a home and just don't know where to begin? Well, when it comes to one of the most important purchases one can make, we understand it can be frustrating and confusing, but it doesn't have to be. Let the Major Mortgage team help you with all your mortgage needs. Major Mortgage means major service, and we would love the opportunity to help you today. Give J.R. McFadden, NMLS number 1246357, a call today at 406-465-1918, or you can visit him at 2001 11th Avenue, Building A, Suite 3 in Helena. Major Mortgage is a division of AMCAP Mortgage, NMLS number 129122, equal housing lender.
Who doesn't love being number one? When your team's dominating the standings, or your favorite band rocks the charts at number one, it feels good, right? Kind of like how it feels when you have auto insurance with State Farm. Because making you feel like number one is an honor your local State Farm agent takes seriously. Through the good times and not so good, your State Farm agent's proud to be here to help life go right.
Call State Farm agent Mike Miller in Helena today. Yes, it's true that Montana is a long way from the Gulf Coast, but you can bring that Cajun flavor home with a stop at Cafe Zydeco. From po' boys to classic sandwiches, Cafe Zydeco has all the best Cajun in town. Are you in the mood for seafood gumbo or crawfish etouffee? Maybe you're craving jambalaya with some shrimp and grits. Head in for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or call ahead for pickup or delivery. Cafe Zydeco will fix all your southern cravings, even on a chilly Montana day. Cafe Zydeco is a proud sponsor of The Jason Walker Show. Do you love to look at photos of Montana, from animals to landscapes and more? Are you looking for a place to get your senior pictures or family portraits done? Are you a business owner looking to upgrade the decor in your offices? Well, look no further than Mark LaRoe Photography. Mark has been shooting beautiful photos all across the Treasure State, from rodeos to portraits, and would love to work with you. Visit marklaroephotography.com to see many masterpieces of his work, then give him a call to schedule your own photo shoot. Or to purchase one of his fantastic pieces, stop by Spirit of the Big Sky Gallery on Custer in Helena. marklaroephotography.com.
Welcome back to the Jason Walker Show.
Welcome back, Jason Walker. Oh, is my microphone on? Is my mic? Hello, check 1 2. There we go. Oh, I got to turn the headphones up. There it is. I don't even know what's going on. Jason Walker Show, Major Mortgage Man Cave. My Kyle Mihelish sticking around. He wants to hear what Coach Choate and we'll break down Coach Cho with Paul Schwedelson. We'll do that here in a couple of seconds. On this day in history, still to come. Don't forget tomorrow, Scott Evans, Helena High football coach, will be in studio. And Amanda Robertson, LPGA golfer, will join us Thursday, unfortunately, on the phone. And then Friday, Lance Hartzler, who covers Northern Arizona athletics, and I believe a great reporter from the Pac-12 Network will join us Friday as well. And I'm thinking next week we're going to have a huge guest on the show. All right, so we know about Coach Choate's comments Friday in The Athletic with Bruce Feldman. We broke those down. We know about yesterday's press conference. We played you a few of his sound bites. And to really break it down is, well, there's nobody better than somebody who was there. And it is Paul Schwedelson, and he joins us now from the Bozeman Daily Chronicle here on the Mike Miller State Farm Hotline. First off, man, I appreciate you joining us. This has been kind of a crazy, well, I guess I want to say last couple of days, but really last 4 or 5 months. And it's just keep getting crazier and crazier, hour by hour almost, it seems, Paul.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I was just sitting here and a little while ago, and all of a sudden, it's like you see the Pac-12. All of a sudden, it's postponing all sports through the end of the calendar year, and all of a sudden, we've been so much, focused so much thinking about football, and now, you start thinking about winter sports and men's and women's basketball and all the other sports as well. Now being affected too. But you're right, it's crazy. And I mean, the thing I always think about too is like, none of us have like lived through this before. It's pretty, like I said, it's crazy. It's just really, it's the only word to really describe it, I guess.
No, it's absolutely true. Paul Schwedelson, Schwedelson joining us here. Jason Walker Show on the Mike Miller State Farm Hotline. All right, so Jeff Choate has been very open and very honest in his entire career at Montana State. But Friday in The Athletic, and then again yesterday in his Zoom meeting with reporters, he doesn't hold back. And that's why I wanted to get you on, because you know the guy. We all know the guy. He's so good and very, like I said, open and upfront and honest. He's very. Let's start with The Athletic, where he basically told the NCAA they need to figure their stuff out because amateurism is, as we know it, is gone, and because of the Power Five, the Big Sky Conference isn't going to have a season until the spring, hopefully.
Yeah, and I mean, he made so many different and interesting points in that article, and one thing also too is like, whenever college sports return, they're going to be different than what they were previously. So you talk about transfer rules and immediate eligibility being allowed, and name, image, and likeness, and players being able to profit off that. So like, that's going to be changing too. Which is a whole, we could have a whole other conversation about that as well.
Very true.
And in terms of his team and in terms of the schedule, I think, and he made this point at the Big Sky Media Day as well. Talking about like, he wants to, if they're going to play, then play, but if not, not.
Right.
But just have a plan and stick to it. And this whole going back and forth and waffling and holding out hope that really now we can look back and say, now that we know what's occurred and, pushing the conference season of the spring, it's hard to say, really how much changed from June to now. And, it's just a difficult situation for a lot of those players who are just kind of, just caught in this limbo of not knowing what's going to come of their season. And now they're talking about playing in the spring, and there's a lot of skepticism about what that will look like and how feasible that is. And so, I think one of the, the biggest things that just resonated was just, Choate being upset at the NCAA regarding that. And, then in terms of the money aspect too, because, one of the big takeaways from when the Big Sky announced it was pushing conference games to the spring, one of the big takeaways from press conferences with Montana State Athletic Director Leon Costello, as well as Big Sky Commissioner Tom Whistle, was when the NCAA was going back and forth, and it feels like so long ago already, but last week there was a lot of criticism of the NCAA when they the Big Sky announced they're going to wait for the NCAA Board of Governors meeting and the board of governors meeting comes out, and they don't make any decisions, and they delay, and then they put it back on each division within the NCAA to make any decisions, and there was just a lot of confusion there. But one thing that was really important and really impactful was the NCAA put out the requirement of the testing of every player and athlete a maximum of 72 hours before every competition for a high-risk sport like football.
Right.
A lot of schools in the Big Sky couldn't do that, just financially in terms of paying private labs and, where these schools are located, the communities that they're in. I mean, I can speak about, Bozeman and Gallatin County. Right now, a big focus in Gallatin County is making sure that there's enough tests for people who are symptomatic, and, asymptomatic tests are not really as available, just because there's priorities on contact tracing and, identifying people that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like everyone is just handing out a test to every person.
Right.
And that's where, and I know that, Leon Costello said that he felt confident that Montana State would be able to handle some of those requirements, but a lot of other schools in the Big Sky couldn't. And so that was a big issue. And so that's something that Jeff Choate pointed out too in that article, was like the NCAA kind of backed some of these schools into a corner,
yep,
in a sense, because they couldn't afford that testing. But maybe the bigger schools at Power 5 levels could, multiple times a week.
And I think I think that's a big thing to focus on too, is, like even Coach Choate talked about it yesterday with Northern Colorado and Portland State and such, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the economics of testing, forget just the money aspect, but how do you get that turnaround? I waited 16 days, Paul, between getting my COVID test and getting the test results back. And football players are supposed to get this within 72 hours before a game. That's just not feasible in a lot of instances.
Right. And so that's, an issue going on. And obviously the testing is important in terms of, people talk about the health and safety of the athletes. And, obviously, there's conversations about, that being the primary driver of these decisions. But it's important, I think, to kind of peel back the onion a little bit and understand how this is happening. And so much of it is financially driven.
Absolutely. Paul Schwedelson joining us. Jason Walker Show does a great job with the Bozeman Daily Chronicle, along with Colton Poole down there in the Gallatin Valley. Yesterday, the Zoom press conference, a couple of things that really stood out to me, Paul, were when Coach Choate talked about, look, the only way, and he doesn't sound to me, in my opinion, positive there's even going to be a spring season, because the Power 5, and we're seeing, the Big Ten and the Pac-12 making their announcement today, but the Power 5 basically has to move to the spring, it sounds like, for the FCS to even have a chance at a season. Did you get that? Was that your takeaway too?
Yeah, and I guess I don't know all the logistics. I don't think any of us really know the logistics of how a spring spring season could work. But I agree with you in terms of, it didn't seem like Jeff Choate was so optimistic about the spring. He was very realistic about all of the challenges that would involve, and one of them being the turnaround until fall of 2021. And Jeff Choate made the point of saying, college football might be able to survive one fall without football.
Yep.
But he made the point of saying it'll be much tougher to survive two.
Well, and that's
and
a
which
lot
I think
of it.
is an important.
Go ahead.
That's an important point to think about.
Yep. Well, and part of that, I feed off of this, Paul, is I've been saying it, a lot of people have been saying it, and Coach Choate said it yesterday. The turnaround from the spring to the fall is, he said you have to focus on 2021 fall first and foremost, because the players' turnaround, the physicality, plus just everything involved. He talked about you're going to have to start winter or spring camp really right after the first of the year in January. That's not feasible in Montana.
Right, and he made the point of saying how, a big reason why he is such a downer on spring ball is because a lot of times the weather is just so challenging that they can't even really accomplish much in their practice.
Right.
And so, obviously, I think if they were to play in the spring, I think they'd figure out a way to make it work. If the season starts in March, let's say you play regular season in March and April, and then you have postseason in May, and then I'm tossing this out.
Right.
I'm not necessarily, I don't know any of this. None of this is already decided, but let's toss out a Memorial Day championship weekend. The weather in February, isn't necessarily that much different compared to maybe November and December, if they're making a deep playoff run. But it's obviously not ideal. And, again, that turnaround is a big factor, and there's just a lot of questions that would go into it. And I mean, in terms of the non-conference teams in the spring too, I don't even know how that would work, because if you're talking about an 8-game conference season in the spring, you're squeezing in a lot of games into a short amount of time. And obviously the big question that, none of us know the answer to is how much better will the situation be in February? Obviously the potential of either vaccines or the situation nationally, with the virus is, we have to see how things go. But obviously it's tricky, and it's very challenging to kind of foresee what's going to happen.
Paul Schwedelson joining us from the Bozeman Daily Chronicle here on the Mike Miller State Farm Hotline. Couple final questions for you, Paul. But when you go back to yesterday's press conference with Coach, and he talked for about 34 minutes with some questions in there. But one of the big things that stuck out there was basically every one of his answers stuck out. And somebody asked the question of the 5th-year seniors, the extra year of eligibility, and all of this. The numbers, like Coach Choate said, this is going to take years to trickle back down to numbers where we see them before COVID, as far as how many people on scholarship, how many kids on a roster. And, he brought up the point, there's going to be 44 seniors in the fall of 2021 for Montana State. And, where do we go with number-wise here?
Right, that's a big question, and if they play in the spring, and let's say everyone uses their fall 2020 eligibility in spring 2021, it's the same school year, so I don't necessarily know how much that would be affected, and I think, obviously at this point, it's hard to say what the best case scenario would be, but it'd be great if the spring, if, think people are healthy and, the virus situation dies down, and either there's a vaccine or whatever it might be, if the spring season can be a success. The challenge obviously being that turnaround like we talked about. But then you talk about players maybe opting out, because if you're talking about maybe a squeezed in season, a compromised season, we don't know whether or not there could be fans at games. There are going to be players that maybe might say, hey, I'd rather wait a few more months and opt out.
Yep.
And then, that would affect the eligibility thing. And, obviously spring sports this past year, a few months ago, kind of dealt with somewhat of a similar situation, but it's so much different because of the roster sizes of those sports. And, a lot of those are partial scholarship sports as well.
Right.
That's the big difference between, when you talk about, the numbers of scholarships. The FCS football teams have 63 scholarships. Is much different than, a lot of other sports that are
Right.
being played in the spring. So that's a challenge. And there's just so many questions, and we just don't know.
No. But I think, Paul, what's comforting is Coach Choate's transparency. He said, look, this is a players-driven program. They have as much say as anybody in that's involved with Montana State football. And I think that's helped Montana State and his players kind of figure things out a little bit. And it seems to be, I know some guys are going to opt out and all of that, but it seems to be that Coach is comfortable letting players make some decisions and have a say in what goes on with their futures.
Yeah, he made an interesting point that a lot of the players who are being really vocal about all of these situations that are going on, who are really trying to go out of their way to make sure that their voices are heard. Jeff Choate made the point of saying, look at the programs that those players are from, which was an interesting point he made, because like you said, he was making the point that, Montana State being a player-driven program, they haven't really had as much players being vocal outwardly, even though, and like kind of making the point that internally they feel like they do have a voice already,
Right.
Which was an interesting point as well. And kind of like you said previously, just about everything he said was an interesting point.
Yeah, no, and it was, and he brought one. It really stuck out to me because I cover the NAIA, specifically the Frontier here in the state of Montana, more than the Big Sky. But he brought up the NAIA, he brought up the schools in Montana, he brought up Division II, and looking at like an Eastern Washington, a Portland State, or Northern Colorado that are having trouble financially, not just athletically but also academically. And maybe they drop back to Division II. He said the landscape after this fall and potentially going into fall of next year, the landscape of college football at the lower divisions will change forever, and it's going to look different a year from now.
Yeah, and another thing that he said that kind of stuck out to me, and it's worth keeping in mind that Jeff Choate played at Montana Western,
right?
Like in NAIA school, like you mentioned, and went on to become, he was a high school history teacher for a number of years, kind of before he got back into got into college coaching. And so, he made the point of saying, something that's what's important to keep in mind too is like when a lot of times, like the average person, when you think of college football, a lot of times you might think of, the big time, SEC Power 5 type levels of college football. And, if you think about, who are going to become teachers in your community, or who are going to become the youth football coaches in your community, so many of those people are coming from Division III, Division II, NAIA schools, FCS schools that, players who might not be on full scholarships, might be on partial scholarships, might be preferred walk-ons, and kind of going back a little bit to what he said in The Athletic in that article, it's important to keep in mind, like, this idea that college football is beyond just that highest level. And it's just so much different at all these different levels. And a lot of it goes back to financials. And, the situation that everyone's kind of going through is just really challenging. And the NCAA's indecision, a week ago didn't really help anyone.
No, it definitely didn't. Paul Schwedelson, our guest here, Jason Walker Show. And you mentioned that, he said he got the idea from MSU SID Bill Lamberty, who, nobody does it better than Lambeau. But, like you said, the tip of the iceberg is that, the top 40 teams, and I can't remember who, it might have been Coulter Nuanez, but said that, it's even the top 40 of those, of the Power 5. That tip of that iceberg is what everybody thinks of, like you said, with college football. And nobody thinks of the smaller divisions and the trickle down. It's like the Titanic. It hit an iceberg, but it was, 1,000 times bigger under the water than and that's the case with football and, other sports, Paul, at the lower levels. Everybody thinks FBS and those top 10 teams, but it's the other ones that are making a big impact, at the NAI level and the other divisions in NCAA.
Right. And something he kind of said along the similar lines was like, if decisions continue to just be, strung out over time, and these players are put in this situation where they don't have a clear idea of what's to come in the future, there's a lot of players who might just be like, you know what, I'm good, I'll stop playing. Like, just kind of upset at the situation that they're kind of being thrown into because of the lack of leadership from those higher levels in terms of decision making on a broad level. He made the point of saying that he feels supported at MSU, but just in terms of the overarching aspect of the NCAA, it's really tough for the players. Just kind of being put in a situation, and obviously we've seen on social media, there's a group of players who are talking about opting out, and with their list of demands and different types of threats. And then there's another faction, that, tweeting out the "we want to play." And, there's a lot of people with a lot of different opinions, and it's ultimately just a difficult situation when you're a player and you're training and you have this mindset so focused on, what your next game is, or preparing for their next game, whether that's 8 months away or 5 months away or, 5 weeks away.
Right.
All that, affects players, and, that makes it really difficult to kind of handle that type of situation when you don't have that clarity. And that was something that when the Big Sky announced it was moving its conference season to the spring, something that, players and Jeff Choate and Leon Costello said at Montana State was that now they have another step to shoot for, because
Right.
if they had continued to try for this fall, there'd just be so much doubt of how long is the season going to last. At any moment, could it get shut down? Yada, 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 which would all be a challenge. And, obviously, some of those questions, we'll have to see how things go. Some of those questions could still exist in the spring. But obviously, we'll have to see how things go. And ultimately, I think, we're all just hoping that at some point we all get past this, worldwide.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. Final point, and I've taken up a lot of your time, but I appreciate the your outlook on this. The final point that Coach Choate made in The Athletic, and then again yesterday, was, this decision should have been made in June as far as the fall season for 2020. The spring 2021 season, he said yesterday, we have to have a decision made by November. We can't be waiting as long as we did and wait till the second week of August for this fall season. For spring next year, this decision has to be made November. How much weight do you think his words will have across the country with that? Because I agree with him.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily, just because, you look at this whole situation. Does anyone really know what these decision makers are really paying attention to?
Oh, no.
Just because, so I guess I don't know about that, but it is an interesting point in terms of, like, we need, he was making the point, and I think it's a valuable one to keep in mind. It's just like, it's just so important to have a clear plan. And if you know Jeff Choate, you know that he is very committed. If he sets something in his mind, he's very committed to that.
Right.
He has a vision for how he wants his program run. He has a vision for, he walks into press conferences, he has like a little note card of all the points he wants to touch on in his opening statement. He's very driven in that sense, very committed to, this is what I'm going to talk about, and then he goes and talks about it.
Yep.
And so that's the point that he was making, I think. And it's an important one, just because he was looking after his players too, about how difficult that was, dealing with a situation where they start workouts, have to shut workouts down, they get going again, and then they try playing, they have practice, and then the season gets moved to the spring. It's just such a challenging thing to have to deal with. So I don't know how much weight necessarily his words hold, but you'd think that just after knowing how much criticism decision makers have gotten, maybe they'll change their process, in the future.
No doubt about it. He did throw in some comedy yesterday too, already claiming the Big Sky Conference Championship, the state championship, because they were the last ones to practice in the state of Montana. That was humorous, and it's up online. It's a great press conference, some great questions from awesome reporters. Paul, appreciate your time. And keep up the good work down there. I'm hoping we get some sort of maybe a Bobcat basketball season we can talk about maybe this winter. But if things look like they do in the Pac-12, I don't think we'll have anything until at least the first of the year. And Eastern Washington, too, we didn't even talk about this yet, Paul, is they canceled all fall sports to the spring, and that includes volleyball and everything. And so they're not even going to try. They're the first in the Big Sky. So do you think we'll see, real quick, do you think we'll see Montana State and the rest of the Big Sky volleyball go the way of Eastern Washington too?
I would lean toward probably. Obviously, we have to wait to see what decisions are made, but just the way things are trending, it just seems like such a challenge to be.
I agree.
Playing sports at the college level. In the near future.
Paul, like I said, appreciate the time, man. You can read him, at P. Schweds on the Twitter. And good stuff. You and Colton do a great job down there in Bozeman. That's my hometown, so great coverage of the Bucks this year, and good coverage of Montana State. Appreciate the time, and we'll talk soon, my man.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Paul Schwedelson joining us from the Bozeman Daily Chronicle, and appreciate his time today. And I hope you got some insight on Coach Choate, what he's like if you haven't ever found out. Now you know. He's open and honest. He even said in the press conference yesterday, from his comments to The Athletic, where he was brutally honest, and he said, look, a lot of the coaches were saying across the country were saying the same thing, but he goes, if I'm going to say it, I'm going to go on record. He said, I'm not, paraphrasing, he goes, I'm not afraid of losing my job at Montana State. I'm not afraid of getting a job in the future. He goes, I'm going to go on record and not hide behind it. So good on him. This segment brought to you by Mark LaRoe Photography. Check it out, marklaroephotography.com. Book all your family senior portrait stuff. You can also purchase anything from the Mark LaRoe Photography Spirit of the Big Sky Gallery. And just check it out, marklaroephotography.com. All right, real quick, let's get to On This Day in History. It is August the 11th. It is Presidential Joke Day. And Joe Biden, who will not be president, picked his vice president nominee today, and it's a joke. But National Raspberry Bombay Day. Is it Bombay? Bombay Day? It is also National Sons and Daughters Day. 1919, Green Bay Packers Football Club, founded by George Calhoun and Curly Lambeau, named after sponsor Indian Packing Company. Would it be that today in our cancel culture? 1929, Babe Ruth becomes the first to hit 500 home runs. The guy that was in second at the time had like 220, less than half. 1950, hitting just 279, Joe DiMaggio was benched for the first time. Hit 279. Guys hit 230 and 220 and get to play because they hit bombs nowadays. 1974, Lee Trevino wins the first of his 2 PGA championships at Tanglewood. 1984, Carl Lewis duplicates Jesse Owens' 36 feet, winning his 4th Olympic gold medal. 2008, the 4x100 meter freestyle relay team, Michael Phelps, Garrett Weber-Gale, Cullen Jones, and Jason Lezak beat France by 8 seconds to win the gold medal and smash the world record at the Beijing Olympics. That was such a great race. Jason Lezak anchored that one. Unbelievable. His split world record. I mean, 8 seconds in the pool is a lot. 2016, Michael Phelps then wins the 200 meter IM at Rio. He becomes the 3rd athlete and the first swimmer to win 4 consecutive Olympic golds in one event. Happy birthday today. 1915, Jean Parker was born. Louise Stephanie Zelinska. She was an American actress, starred in a couple of movies, Little Women, Beyond Tomorrow. Why is that important? Well, she was born in Butte, Montana. 1953, happy birthday, Hulk Hogan, born in Augusta, Georgia. Herb Brooks passed away on this date in a car wreck in 2003, the great ice hockey coach. And Robin Williams died on this date in 2014. Let's see, let's do this.
We're almost at the end of the show. What did we learn? And what did he miss? Time for the walk-off.
Time for the walk-off, and it is brought to you by Cafe Zydeco, 625 Euclid in Helena. Check them out and get some great food. They are open 11 to 8 through Friday, all right? And then they have different hours for Saturday and Monday. Close on Sunday, right? Is that right? Let me look. Yep. 9 to 3 on Saturday, closed on Sunday. All right. Thanks to Kyle Mihelish, Capital football coach, for joining us today, and always fun time to check in with Coach. He's great. He also did tell me the youth football small fry program in Helena is going to happen no matter what, I'm told. And if it doesn't happen, if it's not approved by the city county health department, they're going to go to Montana City and Jeff City to play. How about that? Something to keep an eye on. Maybe we'll talk to Scott Evans about that tomorrow. Paul Schwedelson from the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. Appreciate his time as well, breaking down Jeff Choate's comments. Went a little long today. Had a lot of fun today, though. Scott Evans will be in studio tomorrow, Helena High football coach, and we'll talk more hopefully positive football stuff. Had a great time. Thanks to you for listening and watching. We'll have the whole show back up on JasonWalkerShow.com here in a little bit. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 with Scott Evans. Again, JasonWalkerShow.com if you miss anything. We'll see you tomorrow.
The Jason Walker Show is produced by the Jason Walker Media Company. Any reuse, rebroadcast, or retransmission without the express written consent of the Jason Walker Show is strictly prohibited. Just listen, watch, and enjoy.